There are things out there. Creatures, monsters, ghouls and spirits. Beings that fall outside the realm of visible truth, beyond the confines of our basic reality. They lurk in the dark, haunt the recesses of our minds, and stir our curiosity in the unusual and weird. They are taboo topics, stories that we tell around the campfire and folklore passed down from our ancestors. We've been taught that these things don't exist, that they are merely myth and legend. Or are they? Welcome to the Occult Archives. I'm your host and spooky librarian, E.M. Moon, but feel free to refer to me as E. Here lies a space beyond all spaces, a library full of arcane information enough to drive any normal person mad. If you can think of it, if you can question it, the archives probably have what you seek. "667, Children of the Beast, issue number 6. What Dreams May Come." Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. Edgar Allan Poe. June 16th, 2016. Subject name, Naomi Starr. Things were different now. I felt like I had been asleep for months and hadn't woken once. I was stuck in this endless loop of dreams and nightmares, and most of them weren't even mine. Most were people in my apartment complex. Some were patrons of the shop I worked in, and others just seemed ancient, almost biblical. I just floated around inside people's heads like a damn ghost, watching the strangest things play out in front of me. It went on like that for days. I finally got so frustrated that I changed the focus of a dream I was in. A man was running, terrified of some sort of unknown force, a dream that had played out in front of me for the 1,000th time. "Why can't you just wake up? Pretend like you're running from something funny, for Christ's sake. Always with the nightmare shit." I cussed aloud and watched the man dash by me, being chased by a giant hot dog with all the fixings. The man turned to see what was chasing him like he always did, but this time it was a hot dog in a bun with little cartoon arms and legs rushing behind him. Instead of continuing to run like a maniac, as he always did, he laughed. He laughed so hard that the hot dog stopped and looked around itself to see what was so damn funny. The more he laughed, the more the hot dog became confused, and I watched as it dissolved in front of us. I sat bolt upright in my bed, wide awake. It was the first time I had been awake since right before my birthday. Peering around, I noticed that my room didn't look anything like it had when I'd fallen asleep. Call me Rip Van Winkle, because it looked as if I had been asleep for decades. My room was coated in cobwebs, obscuring my furniture and anything else that lay about. "What the?" I exclaimed as I slid out of bed and wandered around my room, pushing through the webbing as I made a trail out to my kitchen and got a drink of water from the tap. My living room and everything else looked just as it had when I had come home from a long night of partying for my 30th birthday, a big difference from how my bedroom looked. I was at a loss for words, but figured maybe a bit of TV would calm my nerves. I filled my cup up with more water and sat on the sofa, flicking the television on. In other news, a mass suicide that occurred on the evening of June 5th is still under investigation. Police have no leads and are currently trying to obtain some sort of guest list to see if anyone was missing. Over 50 bodies were found in the cemetery just outside of New Orleans. A news reporter spoke before shifting to video footage of the crime scene. I almost spit my water out as the video showed the same cobwebs that were in my room, draped all over the cemetery headstones and mausoleums. This webbing didn't look like your typical cobwebs, though. It was almost tinted blue, a color that was practically lost to the average eye. The police are currently looking for Jeremy Beaumont, who inherited the cemetery from his family, but his whereabouts are unknown at this time. The reporter finished as they moved on to a new segment. There was a connection there. A connection between why I had been asleep for well over a week and a cemetery party in the Deep South. New Orleans was a city that I knew quite well. I was probably going to be fired for this in the morning. Subject number 001. Violet Eve. Missy was gone. In a way, I felt relief. but also intense grief that the only person left from my childhood was now dead. The only thing I had left to remember her by now was the bumblebee key and the sheets of flesh from her palms. Gruesome. I spent the week after her death holed up in my room again. I had my stuff back and was taking my time unpacking and organizing it in my new bedroom, trying to keep my mind off the scenario in which I had to take them back. Cassandra had asked if Adam, Henri, and I had wanted to move in since the shop was destroyed. She had also allowed Kane and Salome to stay for as long as they needed to, which was surprising, considering she didn't even know them. But I needed them to stay. The more of us there were together, the better off we all would be. We could keep each other safe and fight this, but there was still so much that we didn't know. I had taken to spending long stints in front of the dresser mirror, examining my skin in different outfits, trying to play down my white hair, and trying to make that damn third eye less creepy looking. I was a mess inside and out, not comfortable in my own skin, and not comfortable with the chaos that was going on around me. Ugh, makeup just isn't helping. I chucked my compact at the dresser and dusted off the caked-on powder. I was wearing my favorite purple outfit, high-waisted shorts and a Cheshire cat top. But the outfit just clashed with my skin too much. It all used to look so perfect with my pale complexion and fiery red hair, but now I looked as if I had eaten a gobstopper. Why can't I just fucking fix this? I cursed, kicking at one of my bags. A page slid out of my portfolio that was propped on top. I was a writer first and an amateur artist second, as I like to try and sketch my characters to give me visual inspiration. And this particular sketch did not disappoint. I had totally forgotten about this illustration in particular. When I had come up with the character idea for Violacious, I had imagined her in two different ways. One was how I looked now. Whether that was foresight on my part, I'm not sure. The other was of a more natural, but still vaguely threatening character. Instead of the lavender skin, she was as pale as I was, with ultraviolet hair. The eyes were still just as dead as mine, milky white orbs set in pale pink flesh. But the third eye was nothing but a tattoo. It still saw everything, however, despite it not looking like a normal eye. This could work, I mumbled to myself. If I could alter everything else, if I could heal myself from being mortally wounded, I was sure I could change my physical appearance. Somewhere in an alternate universe existed a version of me that probably looked just like this. All right, Vi. Work your magic. I closed my eyes and rubbed my hands together as I let myself recall the colored pencil sketch that I had just been looking at. I just wanted some sort of semblance of my former self, even if it was without the red hair and green eyes. We had to find a way to make ourselves at least look somewhat normal, so we didn't have to stay confined to the house. There were 4 of us now, and walking around out in the open looking like Halloween in June just wasn't going to work. I opened my eyes and stopped holding my breath. The image that shone back at me was exactly what I wanted. My once white hair was now of a violent shade of purple, thick and heavy around my shoulders as it cascaded down my back in waves. The eyes were still a hazy cloud of white, but the third one was now a simple tattoo in purple and black ink. My skin was back too, though I felt like it still had a slight purple tint to it. Now that's much better, I sighed. I felt vain, though. The others still very much looked like something straight out of a fantasy film, and here I was looking somewhat normal. Maybe I could change them too, if they were as concerned as I was about their appearance. Shameful. I scolded myself, pinching at the pinky flesh of my arm. Knock, knock. Violet? It was Salome. I had let her into my inner sanctum, but had been keeping everyone else at arm's length. Come in, but shut the door quick, I instructed her, smoothing out some wild hairs atop my head. Salome entered and breathed. Holy fuck. How did you do that? She walked up to me and ran her fingers through my bright purple hair. It was something I drew. I handed her the sketch and watched her compare and contrast between me and the illustration. When did you draw this? She asked, seemingly quite impressed by the artwork. Same time I drew this one. I handed her another sketch. a drawing I had done years ago of a purple-skinned, white-haired woman with 3 eyes. I did these back in 2014. You mean you became your art? Salome seemed to think it was rather incredible. A character. That's Violacious. She was this sort of superhero concept I had been toying with. I never really did anything with her, but I just loved the idea. I explained, putting on a little eyeshadow. Can you change me too? Salome asked after thinking about it for a moment. I figured you'd ask. I can try, but I can't promise anything. I warned her. I was getting better, but I'd never altered the way anyone looked before now. I don't care. I can't possibly look any worse than I do right now. She shrugged, waiting for me to doll her up. Close your eyes then, I commanded her. I'd rather her eyes be closed, just in case something went wrong. I set up a sketch in my mind, pulled ideas from faraway realms, and then focused all of those concepts onto Salome. After a few moments, I was rather satisfied with my results and told Salome that it was okay to finally take a look at herself in the mirror. Violet. Salome turned and grinned at me as she messed with her new hair. I had taken the green tint of her skin down a few shades, shrunk her antlers till they were almost invisible, replaced her swampy hair with thin twists and braids, but had left the pointy ears and black eyes. Just the right amount of freak. She smiled at me before giving me a big hug. I'm glad you like it. You think the guys will want me to make them over too? I wasn't sure if they were as concerned about their appearance as Salome and I had been. I think Kane likes his claws and sharp teeth, as do I, but I'm not sure how Adam feels. He's been pretty quiet the last few days. He'll go smoke with Kane, but has hardly spoken to anyone else. I think he's taken Nate's death pretty hard. Salome informed me. Not only was I vain, but I was selfish. I hadn't even considered how fucked up he must have felt after discovering the badly mangled body of his best friend. Maybe I should talk to him. I bit my lower lip, turning myself away from the mirror. I didn't care what I looked like at this point. I just wanted Adam to know that I was here for him, despite my disappearing act. I'm going to go talk to him. I nodded at Salome before she replied. Do that, but the real reason I came up here was Josiah. He requested that we all meet on the front porch, but I have no idea why. Salome followed me out the bedroom door, but instead of following her down the stairs, I knocked on Adam's door. I could hear music blaring from his room, and waited for him to answer. Subject name, Adam Bodine. I didn't hear Violet knock the first time. My music was up so loud that it drowned everyone out, and I liked it that way. She must have knocked a few more times before I finally heard it, turned down the volume, and answered the door. What I found was an entirely new version of her. That porcelain skin was back, but the red hair was now purple, and the third eye had melted into nothing but a tattoo on her forehead. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I thought for a second I could detect the former green of her eyes beneath those cataracts. Yeah, I don't really want company, but I'll make an exception for you. I gave her a half smile and opened the door wider for her to come inside. I had tried to make the room feel like home with the few things that Henri had saved from the shop before the police took over for their investigation. You like Led Zeppelin? Violet smiled dreamily as she looked at the poster for Mothership. I do. One of my favorites, but I lean more towards Pink Floyd. This was the first time we had any sort of idle chit-chat since our transformations. Pink Floyd is good too. All classic rock is good, especially the Brits. Violet sat herself down on the edge of my bed while I went to clear away all the vinyls that were littering the top of the bedspread. So, what's up? I sat on top of my mini amp and waited for her to speak. Just wondering how you were holding up. She arched a purple brow at me. I knew she was talking about Nate, but I didn't want to talk about him. I'm good. No big deal. I drew my mouth into a thin line and tried to make Violet believe my words, but she clearly didn't. Salome said you were taking it pretty hard, as you should. I just wanted to make sure that you were all right. Violet's gaze connected with mine for a moment, and I really wished I could see those green eyes of hers that I had become fond of when we first met. I could get lost in them right now with how I felt. "Why didn't you fix your eyes?" I blurted in response, a reply that was ruder than I had meant it to come off. "Because these are how the character's eyes look?" Violet shot back, her lips pursing after she spoke. "What do you mean?" I wasn't sure I understood. "The other look, this look, both are character concepts I drew up a few years ago. I had to explain the same thing to Salome." She shrugged, now looking a little self-conscious. "There's nothing wrong with it. I just figured you'd want your original eyes back. They were such a beautiful color." I couldn't help myself. Even though I wasn't looking for any sort of relationship or even a casual romp, I couldn't help but be Casanova. Violet blushed lilac and averted her gaze from mine, a slight smile creeping across her lips. I figured the white eyes still gave me a vaguely threatening appearance without looking like I stepped out of an acid trip." Violet blinked, but when she opened her eyes, they were that gorgeous emerald green that I love so much. "Well, I like them both ways." I smiled back, momentarily forgetting about Nate. "Thank you," she replied, and I assumed I had derailed her immediate concern for me. Then a thought struck me. "I meant to tell you something the other day. Josiah told me what they found at the cemetery." "He did?" I would say that was surprising, but he seems to have changed his tone about us a bit. Violet had noticed that too. I was just going to give her the rundown when another knock sounded on the door, and Henri cracked it open. "Josiah wants us down on the front porch. He said he has something he needs to discuss with everyone." Henri caught sight of Violet and wiggled his eyebrows at me while mouthing something about her current appearance. "Of course he does," I replied as Violet got up and let Henri direct the two of us to the front porch. "Everyone accounted for?" Josiah was set up in an antique rocker, a large electronic tablet in his lap. Everyone else was already out there, including the entirety of their little council, with Salome and Kane to make it complete. "I meant to go over with all of you what we discovered at Beaumont Cemetery, but unexpected events have delayed that." Josiah turned the tablet on and began swiping away through pictures before he found the one that he wanted. "These are pictures from the cemetery taken by myself on the 6th. He turned the device around so everyone could see what he was talking about. It was a shot of the Beaumont mausoleum, covered in what I had originally thought to be a thick shroud of spiderwebs. "Cobwebs?" Kane didn't seem to think that cobwebs in a cemetery were that big of a deal. Salome, on the other hand, had her inky eyes narrowed in on the screen. "Not cobwebs. We had a sample tested, and the mess seems to be some sort of mitogen in a solid state. These cobwebs were once that fog that transformed the four of you." Josiah pointed at each of us individually. "You're taking the piss," Violet exclaimed. She was just as shocked as I had been. "I don't know what that means, but I can assure you that I am not. This mitogen was used, we think, to activate something in your bodies that triggered your transformation. We have no idea how it was able to go from a gaseous state to a solid of sorts, but that is neither here nor there. This mitogen also killed any human that was exposed to it, but not you four. You're different, not entirely human, and we want to have your blood tested to see what the difference is." Josiah passed the tablet around so everyone could get a good look at the pictures. It had just gotten to me when a bar popped up across the screen with a news alert. The title read, "Mysterious webbing appears all over the world." I knew I was supposed to just be looking at the pictures, but the headline had caught my eye. I clicked on it and a news article popped up, complete with video footage. Josiah?" I turned the screen around so he could see what I was seeing. He grimaced, an expression that told me this wasn't news to him. What is it?" Violet craned her head to get a look at the screen and saw the headline for herself. I didn't bother waiting for Josiah's approval before I clicked the play button on the video and waited for it to load. "Mysterious spider-like webbing is popping up all over the world, and it seems to be a phenomenon that has baffled the general populace and scientists alike. About a week ago, witnesses all over the globe in over 38 countries have taken pictures and video of this sticky web-like substance. There seems to be no sort of arachnid or insect that has created them, and upon further inspection, they appear to be nothing more than just cobwebs. The strange thing is that all of these sightings seem to crop up around the same time, all after June 16th of this year. Let's see what actual eyewitnesses have to say about it. A familiar face was covering the story as she switched to eyewitness video accounts.
We can't explain it. Started driving to work on Monday and the highway was just covered in these webs. Looked like Spider-Man had a blast.
A man from California chuckled as they showed video shots of the old Pasadena highway. All over my fields. I woke up to find my crops completely covered in it, and it seems like my corn just doubled in size overnight. It truly was a miracle for us, but the CDC wouldn't let us take any of it home, let alone consume it.
Another woman attested about her farm out in the Midwest.
It's the end times, I tell you. Jesus ain't happy with the heathens and liberals running around out here letting everyone and their brother do whatever the hell they want. We're being punished.
A man in Georgia stood in front of a church that was just doused in the webbing.
And this phenomenon is not restricted to just the United States. There have been reports as far as Japan and Australia where people are experiencing the same mysterious substance. Stay tuned as we receive further information on the webbing that is taking the world by surprise. I'm Jessica Blanchard with WWL-TV.
The anchor signed off before the video ended.
There have to be dozens of us.
Salome's inky black eyes were wide in awe.
Hundreds.
Violet disagreed. Most likely. I'm sure there are a lot more of your kind out there. Adam filled me in on what Violet discovered regarding L-Cipher Labs, and we are currently trying to get a hold of anyone who may have worked with them. Josiah put the tablet down and lit a cigar. So, what do we do? Are we going to go try and find more of us, or just sit here and wait for them to find us instead? I questioned. After what happened a few nights ago, I wasn't sure Josiah was going to let us leave anymore. The issue with that is finding them. We could head out to one of the many locations that the webbing was spotted at, but that doesn't mean we'll find anyone afflicted. They could be long gone, or dead even. We just have to sit tight and try to work on shedding some more light on this situation. Josiah offered me a cigar, and I took it before lighting it with my finger.
Wonderful. More waiting.
Violet scooted closer to me on the steps and took my unlit cigar. I lit it for her, and she thanked me before puffing away. There is one thing we could take a look at, however, but it would be a long ride, and I don't think we have the ability to send all of us up there. Josiah took a puff off of his own cigar and addressed Violet.
And that would be...
Salome asked for Violet instead. We have a business acquaintance up in Salem. She called Cassandra this morning and said that she had just woken up from a 1.5 week long sleep. Her room was covered in cobwebs, and she has seen the news. Wanted Cassandra to give her some advice. Josiah arched a brow, and a grin spread across Violet's face.
You think she's one of us?
She asked eagerly. I was just as hopeful as she was. Yes. She said that she spent well over a week walking in and out of people's dreams, and it wasn't until she got fed up with it that she realized she could apparently manipulate the dream she was in. This woke her up somehow, but she is now afraid to go back to sleep. I plan on staying behind with Leo and Franklin. Medusa and Jackie have to work, but Cassandra offered to accompany you. Josiah finished half of his cigar and snubbed it out in a crystal ashtray.
When do we leave?
Violet perked up from the stairs and looked as if she was ready to drive to Salem all by herself.
We will leave this evening. That should give you all time to pack and get things in order.
Cassandra finally took her turn to speak. And maybe you can make these other two look a bit more human-like. A lot of you will get burned at the stake walking into Salem like that. Josiah was rather amused at his own joke.
Speaking of which, how did you manage that one?
Medusa pointed at Violet's long purple hair.
The same way I do everything else.
Violet shrugged, finally picking her jittery self up off the stairs. Go on then, get yourselves prepared to leave this evening. Leo is letting you all use his crossover, so at least the trip is comfortable, but his only stipulation is that you let him take a blood sample first. Josiah clapped his hands on his thigh and stood up from the rocking chair. Violet nodded and was gone in a flash, as Salome quickly followed. Kane waited for me before entering the house to pack our things. I'm glad Salome has found herself a friend. She doesn't play well with most people. Kane confided in me as we climbed the front stairs. I think Violet needs the companionship right now, especially after what happened to Missy. I still felt bad for trying to kill her friend. I think she understands that what happened wasn't anyone's fault but Missy's. She made her choice. Kane interjected to comfort me. It seems that way, but I still don't understand why angels, or whatever Jeremy actually is, would be after us. Just saying the words made my brain hurt. Maybe we really are some sort of demonic hybrid. Only time will tell. Kane broke off from me as he entered his own room, and I went to mine. Things were starting to get heavy, and I wasn't sure what we were going to find in Salem.
June 17th, 2016. Subject name, Naomi Starr. You should be fired, but we were able to get someone in to cover your shifts. We understand that you were sick, and you are one of our best practitioners, so I'm giving you a get-out-of-jail-free card. Next time, try to find a way to call in and let us know. Allison mildly scolded me as I entered work 2 evenings after my rude awakening. I really do apologize. My phone was off, and the flu can be a real ass-kicker. I felt a little embarrassed that I had to lie, but no one was any the wiser. Evening shift should be a cakewalk tonight for you because of the Salem pub crawl this weekend. You may get a lot of people wanting readings, though, so you should tip out really nice. Oh, and we got these really cute souvenirs from the pub down the street. They asked if we would wear them as advertisement. I agreed, only if they would do the same for us. Allison finished the paperwork from the earlier shift and handed me the stack before sliding a little wooden medallion on a cord over the counter. I've got it handled. I smiled as I tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear and reluctantly looped the talisman with a cauldron burned on it around my neck. Call if you need anything. She waved me off as she exited the shop, and I got ready to wait for customers to possibly pour in. Allison had been right. It had been a slow evening. Only a few people came in to buy a couple crystals and some incense. They were only mildly inebriated, and I kind of wished I had a glass of wine myself after the week I had. The chimes above the front door sounded, and I looked up from my novel that I was reading to see an incredibly attractive woman enter, with long jet black hair and blood-red lips. Welcome to Brigade's Dawn. Can I help you with anything? I greeted her as she sauntered over to the glass counter and started looking at the crystals inside the display. Just looking for right now, she responded in a thick accent that was unfamiliar to me. Well, my name is Naomi. If you need anything, just let me know. I smiled at her, weakly, as she sashayed over to another display that held the dream crystals. She picked up a small charm set with moldavite and dream quartz and began rotating it in her fingers as she closed her eyes. I assumed she was trying to feel its energy as she set it back down and picked up a large hunk of Lemurian crystal, repeating the same ritual. There was something off about her, something I didn't quite like, but since she wasn't harming anything, there was nothing I could do. I just had to wait till she found what she wanted, paid for it, and left. She now had a handful of assorted crystals and came back over to the front counter to set them down. Can I ask you a question, Naomi? She had caught my attention, her deep brown eyes almost glowing under the glittering of the aura quartz in the case below. Of course, I'm here to help. I forced another feeble smile out of pure discomfort, but I had to be polite to the patrons, regardless of how they made me feel. What do you know about this new pub that they just built a few doors down? It seemed to go up overnight. She leaned in over the counter to thumb the medallion around my neck, and I could smell the scent of forest rain on her skin. Well, most of our community isn't so keen on it since it is kind of a mockery to the Salem witch trials in a sense, but I heard that the opening tomorrow night is going to be huge. Half off drinks and appetizers if you come in wearing a witch's hat. I explained, though I wasn't happy about the pub myself. It was called the Witch's Brew, which was fine in and of itself, but they had erected a makeshift pyre in front of the establishment with a sign that read, "Try our Pyre Fire cocktail." I assumed it was probably loaded with fireball. It does seem a bit tasteless, doesn't it? I saw that pyre. What are they planning on doing with it? She was now running her hands over the glass top of the counter as she spoke. I heard they were going to light it as some sort of gimmick to get more customers. They had everything cleared with the Salem Fire Department to keep the blaze contained, but I find it very distasteful. Even though she made me uncomfortable, her way of thinking seemed to be aligned with most of the witchcraft community here in Salem. And where did they get the pole for the center of the pyre? I noticed that the wood looked ancient.
This woman was just full of questions, but another couple had come in and was waiting patiently behind her to ask their own. That I don't know. There was a rumor that it was one of the trees that were in the wooded area off of Boston Street, but I can't confirm that. I nodded at the couple behind the woman to let them know that I would be with them shortly.
Ah, I see. Thank you, Naomi. You were very helpful.
She smiled and tapped the pile of crystals in front of her. I took that as she was ready for me to ring her up and made haste with finishing her purchase so she could finally leave and I could help the next people in line.
My name is Gabby, by the way. I'll probably be back very soon. I'm in need of a good tarot reading.
She smiled at me, showing 2 rows of sparkly white teeth before finally making her leave from the shop. We look forward to seeing you next time. I lied. I just wanted her to leave so I could help these customers and then cleanse the shit out of the shop. Something was just off about the woman, and I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but I hoped she wouldn't come back.
Subject number 001, Violet Eve. I had been passed out in the far back seat of the crossover, my head on Salome's shoulder, when we finally entered Salem. She shook me awake to point out the window at all the crazy shops and people milling about in the streets. It seemed like there was some sort of celebration going on, and by the looks of it, everyone was knackered as hell.
What's going on? Everyone looks sloshed.
I heard Henri ask from the seat in front of me where he and Kane were now looking out the windows. I saw a sign when we entered the city saying something about a pub crawl. Cassandra replied as she turned down a side street.
I see the crawling, all right.
Adam laughed as we watched a man stumble, trip over his own feet, and begin crawling his way towards something that would prop him back up. Cassandra parked the car in front of a beautiful shop whose windows were full of dragon statuary, large crystal points, and wind chimes. The sign above read Brigade's Dawn in bright blue letters. She killed the engine and we all began to pile out of the car. I had made the altered men in our company look a bit more human, but there was only so much I could do. Adam's horns had been diminished to the point that his hair would cover them, and the scales looked more like scarring around his eyes, but there wasn't much I could do for his flaming hands and arms. He had to just control his fire so he didn't torch the long sleeves he had donned to cover them up. Kane had been much easier to do since his affliction wasn't as obvious, but his hulking size still made him a bit intimidating to behold. "Have I ever met this woman?" Henri asked as we made our way into the shop. "You've spoken with her before over the phone, but that's it. I had her order the voodoo products that she carries here from your shop. Her name is Naomi, and you aren't allowed to try and bed her, Henri." Cassandra scolded him as we opened the front door to the sweet melody of wind chimes and stepped inside. "Welcome to Brigade's Dawn." A woman with strawberry blonde hair was carefully hanging up bags of herbs behind the counter as she turned to see all of us standing there. "Cassandra, I'm so glad you're here." She rushed from behind the counter and embraced the tall woman in white. "How are you holding up?" Cassandra asked, studying her face. The woman's eyes looked a bit dark, like she hadn't slept in a few days. "I haven't slept since I called you. I'm afraid to," Naomi lamented, now glancing to see the rest of us standing by awkwardly. "You brought company." Naomi instantly looked addled as she shifted her attention down the line from one of us to the next. "They're here to help. This is Kane, Adam, Salome, Violet, and Henri, who you've spoken with before. He's the proprietor of the Crescent City Shaman in New Orleans." Cassandra introduced all of us before Naomi interjected. "Your herbal candies are a big hit here. Everyone loves them." She complimented Henri, who just grinned widely at her. Cassandra might have told him no, but he was already smitten with the woman. "Is there a place we could all sit and talk?" Cassandra asked gently as Naomi kept glancing at the door. I'm getting ready to close up shop, and then maybe we could all go get a drink and talk about it," Naomi suggested as she went to finish counting down the drawer. In less than 15 minutes, she had finished her closing duties and had locked up shop as we headed up the street to one of the many pubs lining the city. We stopped at the first one we came to, a pub titled The Witch's Brew. "This one isn't open yet." Naomi screwed her face up in disgust at the prop they had erected in front of the bar. A sign that read, "Try our Pyre Fire cocktail," was tacked to the post of a makeshift burning stake, like the ones used to kill witches so long ago. That's bloody offensive, I breathed, taking in the sight in front of me.
That's what I said, but it's Salem after all. Anything for a buck.
Naomi sounded bitter.
What's the best place to get a drink around here?
Salome asked as Naomi still focused her attention on the unlit pyre.
Down this way. I'll take you all to my favorite dive.
Naomi snapped her attention back to the group and waved her hand for us to follow. It took us a minute to get a seat at Naomi's usual bar, but we requested one out on the back patio, hoping there would be fewer people to overhear our conversation. Everyone ordered their drinks, except Kane, who we discovered had been sober for months now, and began our talk once everything had gotten to the table. Naomi informed us of her long sleep, waking to the cobwebs, and seeing the news report about similar incidents all over the globe.
I just don't understand it. What is going on?
Naomi had downed her second glass of white wine and was starting on her third. We still aren't totally sure. There are some forces at work here that we are quite unfamiliar with in this sense, but from what we know... Cassandra paused, trying to find the right combination of words that wouldn't send the woman running for the hills. So I stepped in. We aren't normal, Naomi. None of us are. I gestured from myself down the line to Salome, leaving Henri and Cassandra out of the group. We were all conceived using a method of IVF that left us... like this. I let myself shift momentarily to my prior form and back again. Naomi blinked a few times, rubbed at her tired eyes, and came in close to get a better look at me.
I'm still dreaming, right?
She cocked her head at me and finished off her third glass of wine. No, you're very much awake. There is something inside of us that was altered by a mitogen in the form of this fog. When it settles after activation, it turns into the webbing that you saw in your room and on the telly. There are obviously quite a lot of us that have been affected by this. It changed us on a molecular level, on a spiritual level. We've been calling ourselves mutants or demons, but I don't necessarily think either of those is the correct term. I shook my head at her.
I don't think I was conceived any other way than natural, though. My mom and dad struggled with pregnancy, yes, but I never knew anything about IVF.
Naomi shook her head back at me.
I had no idea either, but that is exactly how I came to be. All of us were conceived that way.
I glanced at Salome. She had been as well, even though we hadn't been sure until a few days ago. It turns out that her mother and father had gone to the clinic for a trial as a couple, but had been none the wiser when her mother had been impregnated with an embryo that had no relation to her father.
This is insane.
Naomi began to laugh as she reached out and plucked Henri's beer from the table and downed it. Even though he was now beerless, he was impressed by her ability to hold so much liquor.
We all pretty much said the same thing, but with what we have been through, we can't deny it.
Adam tried to make her understand as he educated her.
We all have special abilities here. I'm basically a big ball of fire. Violet can alter the world around her. Kane can summon and control hellhounds, and Salome has the power of decay. From what we were told, your dream-walking seems to be yours.
Naomi paused mid-drink and thought about it for a second.
I didn't think about that, but I look rather normal compared to the rest of you.
Naomi tried not to offend, but at this point none of us were hardly offended by that. We actually don't even look like this. You saw a brief glimpse of my true form. The rest of us are kind of on the same page, but not all of us changed physically. I thought back to Missy. Appearance-wise, she looked the same as she always had, but her soul was the part that had turned into a terrifying monster.
Why, though? Why us? Why make us this way?
Naomi shot off with a barrage of questions. We're still in the process of figuring that out. The more of you we encounter, the more we seem to know. I can go into more detail later, but not here. Too many prying eyes and listening ears. Cassandra spoke, and I noticed that quite a few people on the patio were staring at us. My camouflage was not up to most people's standards, apparently.
Then let's get the fuck out of here, because I have to know what is going on. I need to be able to get some sleep.
Naomi rose from her seat after emptying another glass of wine, and stumbled slightly before Henri helped her steady herself. Cassandra tossed some cash on the table for a tip, and the lot of us made our way out the back gate of the patio and to our cars. Naomi's flat was smaller than the one Henri and Adam had occupied, but it was immaculate and richly decorated like a hippie's dream. She immediately lit some sage and cleansed everyone as they came through the door. Just in case, as she put it. She graciously offered us a drink as we sat in her living room, and she ran to the kitchen to grab a bottle of wine. I swear I'm not an alcoholic. This is just a lot to swallow. Naomi defended her copious amounts of wine drinking tonight, but I didn't blame her one bit.
Trust us, we know how traumatic it can be,
Adam assured her. I thought back to my transformation in the cemetery. It made me begin to wonder about Naomi. I just thought of something. I burst into the conversation. All of us had extremely painful experiences when we transformed, but you didn't mention anything about that.
I was asleep. I don't remember anything except coming home from partying for my birthday, and then I woke up a few nights ago.
Naomi sipped at her wine and kicked off her sandals. And what about your dreams? Tell us a bit more about that. Cassandra derailed my question from further thought and went on.
They started out as my own, but I've been lucid dreaming for years, so I thought I'd be able to wake myself up. Instead, I ended up in my neighbor's dreams and just kept going on from there until I figured out I could change the outcome of this one dude's dream, and I woke up.
Naomi shrugged as a black and white cat slunk out from behind an ottoman and crawled into her lap.
Dreamwalking is a pretty awesome power to have.
It was the first word Henri had spoken since we sat down. He was already infatuated with Naomi, and he had hardly known her an hour.
Maybe, but with not being able to sleep, it seems like more of a curse.
Naomi sighed as she sunk into the sofa.
I just don't understand it.
None of us did at first, but we figured it out. We all had the same birthdays, we were all IVF babies, and we all have special powers and abilities that are beyond regular human capabilities. It's scary, but we have a choice on how we use them and what we do with our lives. I chimed in to comfort her some more. It's getting late, and we still haven't checked into the hotel. Cassandra glanced at her watch. You're leaving already? Naomi's expression was one of dismay. I could tell that she didn't want to be alone. We drove all day, and I am sure all of us want to get some rest. We can work on things tomorrow, Cassandra responded. I wasn't very happy with the way she was treating Naomi, considering they were friends.
Okay, that sounds good.
Naomi didn't argue, but I could see that she was dreading sleeping alone as everyone stood to leave. We were all saying our goodbyes, and when the lot of us had exited the apartment, I silently pulled Naomi aside. I know you don't want to be alone because you're afraid to sleep. I know how that is. I've had night terrors for years, and with these new abilities, my dreams have taken me clear across the country. Literally. We may not have the same gifts, but I think they're similar, and I just wanted to give you some advice. Not that I'm an authority on anything. I rambled, avoiding looking at Naomi. She slightly intimidated me for some reason.
I'll take that advice. Anything is better than nothing at this point.
Naomi looked so damn tired. You said you lucid dream. Take advantage of that. Know that you are the one in control of these dreams, not the dreams in control of you. You can do whatever it is that you want. If you want to wake up, then wake up. If you can't, just call out to me. I'm sure I'll hear you. I patted her on the shoulder, and she pulled me into a big hug before she said anything in return. Thank you.
You're right. I'm strong enough to control this.
Naomi took a deep breath and opened the door for me. I waved at her silently as I slipped down the hall and left her alone to finally get some rest. Hopefully.
Subject name, Adam Bodine.
Thank you so much.
Cassandra thanked the woman at the front desk of the Hawthorne Hotel and came to bring us our keys.
We could only afford 2 deluxe suites, so Violet, Kane, and Salome will be in one room, and then me, Henri, and Adam in the other.
She handed a key card to me and the rest of the group before Violet spoke.
Wouldn't it make more sense to put us 3 in one room and the blokes in the other?
Violet waved her key card between her, Salome, and Cassandra.
I just figured since you and Salome are so close, and she and Kane are an item, that it would just work out better that way. Plus, Henri and Adam are brothers, and they can share a bed.
Cassandra smiled at me.
I guess that makes sense,
Violet muttered, but she looked like the notion bothered her for some reason.
Right. We are in room 418, and you all are in room 418.
Cassandra was looking at the receipt in her hand. I thought you said there were 2 rooms. I shot up a brow.
Excuse me,
Cassandra called out to the woman at the desk.
I requested 2 deluxe rooms, but this says that we are all in room 418. Yes, ma'am. Room 418 is a deluxe room with 2 queen beds and a sitting area with a sofa bed. That was all we had left when the room was booked.
The woman shook her head.
Thanks for telling me, Josiah. Okay, we can make this work.
Cassandra looked rather irritated, but headed off towards the elevator anyway. This isn't so bad, I exclaimed as we all settled into the room and got our things situated. Yeah, but now we have to figure out sleeping arrangements with only 3 beds. Kane tossed his bag on the sofa, but Cassandra picked it up and took it into the bedroom.
Kane and Salome in 1 bed, and then I guess myself and Violet in another, and you boys get the 3rd.
Cassandra threw her bag under the queen bed, leaving the sofa for me and Henri. Violet looked like she didn't want to sleep in the bed with Cassandra, but what was she going to do? I helped Henri pull the sofa bed out and immediately plopped myself down on the mattress and kicked back.
What are our plans exactly?
Violet was settled on the edge of her bed with her shoes already off. Barefoot as usual.
I want to help Naomi with her abilities. She is a bit more than just an acquaintance to me, and I want to make sure she's safe and comfortable with her new powers before we head back to New Orleans.
Cassandra slipped into the bathroom and came back out wearing the slinkiest negligee I had ever seen. I watched as Henri's eyes went wide and he buried himself in the pillow next to me.
We aren't going to try and stick around to, maybe try and find the clinic that was located here?
Violet was pushing Cassandra and oddly combative about her plans.
Josiah did show me the website you and Adam stumbled upon. I guess we could try to find it and see if anything comes up, but let's get some rest for right now because I'm exhausted after that last quarter of the drive.
Cassandra agreed and slipped into her side of the bed. I was tired myself, but wired for sound for some reason. Henri was tossing and turning next to me on the sofa as Kane and Salome changed into their pajamas and climbed into the other bed. Violet was still sitting on the edge of hers, just staring at the floor with her tiny feet tucked underneath her. Not tired? I asked her, pulling off my heavy boots before the long-sleeve shirt that I had been wearing. It was starting to make me hot, if that was even possible.
I am, but I just keep thinking about Naomi. She was really scared, and I don't blame her. Dreams have always been a terrifying thing for me.
Violet pulled her hair away from her face, and I could see the tattoo of the 3rd eye waver in its reality as she thought. Did you talk to her? I asked as she got up from the bed and came to sit closer to me.
I did. I suggested that she trust herself, take control, and that I would be here if she needed me.
Violet insinuated that Naomi could find her in her dreams. Then maybe you should get some sleep in case she comes looking for you. I threw an old band shirt over my head and sat back down on my bed.
I'm just not comfortable with this sleeping situation,
Violet replied as she turned to see Cassandra all curled up under the fuzzy blankets, asleep. Cassandra won't bite, I assured her, but she just shook her head.
That isn't it. I don't like the way she treated her so-called friend. Naomi was clearly fearful of being alone, and Cassandra didn't even offer to stay with her or bring her here. She just waved it off.
Violet seemed agitated. I don't think she meant anything by it. I found myself defending Cassandra's decision.
Regardless, maybe I should have stayed instead.
Violet got up from the end of the sofa bed and meandered back to her own. She'll be okay, Vi. Just try and get some rest. I whispered at her in the darkness as she clicked off the bedside lamp.
Sure,
she mumbled as she rolled over and went to sleep.
Subject name, Naomi Starr. I was afraid to sleep, but I knew that if I didn't, I would be useless at work the next evening, and even more useless in finding out more about what I was now. The other 4 were ahead of me in this, mostly because I had slept away my first week and a half with this new power. I could manipulate my dreams. I could control what went on and wake myself up if I needed to, but it didn't make me any less scared. As I climbed into bed, Druid pounced onto the bed next to me, purring the whole way. I was thankful I had gotten him one of those auto-feeding bowls, or he would have starved while I had taken my long cat nap. Why hadn't anyone come to check on me either? Maybe they had. I still hadn't taken the time to charge my phone up. Even though I wanted to fight sleep, it overcame me, and I was tossed into a dream that I definitely didn't want to be in. I was in the middle of town, or at least it looked that way. It definitely wasn't modern day, though. I was standing in front of Proctor's Ledge, the famed spot where 19 witches were hanged in the Salem witch trials of 1692. This was not a place I wanted to be right now, but I guess my mind had brought me here because of how much that new pub pissed me off. I thought it was wrong to use the deaths of innocent people, possibly my kind, to profit from instead of remembering why those were terrible times. If I was in the Salem of 1692, I would eventually see the hangings. I was now definitely ready to wake up. But the hangings were not what I saw at all. I saw a man walk up to the knot of trees with a shovel and began digging a hole. He then planted a strange-looking tree into the ground and packed the dirt around it. When he was finished, he scampered away into the darkness. From a regular vantage point on the hill, you couldn't see the tree amidst the other, older ones, but when you came closer, there it was. My dream sped up like someone had pressed the fast-forward button, and the tree grew taller, but not as tall as the others. And then they were hanging people from the limbs around it, but that tree sat untouched. People lost their lives in its midst as it stood tall and proud while the hangings went on. I covered my eyes at the sight, and when I removed my hands from my face, I seemed to be back in the present day, modern structures and all. There were people there again, but instead of stringing figures up in the trees, they had a saw and a rope and were hacking down that tree that had been planted so long ago. They trimmed it of its limbs and then fell it to the ground, the earth shuddering around me as it collided with the mossy earth. This will be perfect, I heard a man mention as they gave it one last tug to free it from the ground. And then I screamed. I was sure that it was audible even in the waking world. I watched this giant blob of a creature leap from inside the tree and come crashing down behind where it had fallen, before casting its eyes on me. The men were gone before the figure began to plod towards me, arms outstretched to snatch me from atop the hill. I kept screaming as I turned heel and ran down the street, all the while listening to the slurping sound the creature made as it slid its fat body down the road after me. "Wake up, Naomi!" I screamed out loud as the thing was starting to gain speed behind me. But I wasn't waking up. I was still running as fast as my bare feet would take me. "Come the fuck on! Wake up!" I wailed as the blob slurped up behind me and waved a pudgy arm at my back, trying to latch on. No! Wake up, Naomi! Violet! Wake me up! I let out one last plea as I felt the thing grab me around the middle and tug me into another place entirely. Subject number 001. Violet Eve. Fuck! I sat up straight in the bed next to Cassandra with a start. Surprisingly, everyone around me was in a dead sleep. I scrambled out of the bed in a panic and came running over to Adam's side of the pull-out sofa. Adam! I shook his arm firmly. Wake up! He groaned, rolled over, and threw a heavy arm over my shoulders, pulling me down. God damn it, Adam! I cursed under my breath, writhing against his heavy frame. Adam was going to smother me if I didn't get him off, and I wasn't going to be able to wake him without waking up everyone. So I handled it the Violet way. In the blink of an eye, Adam and I both were sitting in the parking lot of the Hawthorne Hotel. What in the ever-loving... Adam flailed about, but I reached out to calm him. Naomi is in trouble, I huffed, pulling his arms down by his sides. What happened? He sputtered, focusing his now hazel eyes on me. Something attacked her. I couldn't see what it was, but she called out to me in her dream. Then she was just... gone. I wasn't sure what it was we were going to do. Naomi was asleep, so her body may have been at her flat, but her spirit sure wasn't. How was I even going to help her? Wait, attacked her in her sleep? Go wake her up then. Adam looked more alarmed than I expected, but I figured it was due to his abrupt awakening. I don't think it's that easy. Your spirit can leave its body, like astral projection. If she's able to cross into other people's dreams and get into their head, I could almost assure you that her spirit is leaving its body. I got up from the curb and began padding across the parking lot. What are you going to do then? Adam tried to catch up with me, but I shooed him back towards the hotel. You have to go wake up the others. I'm going to go head to her flat and at least sit with the body until we can figure out a way to save her. I took off running in the direction I knew Naomi would be. In seconds, I was at her flat and already inside. I cracked the door to Naomi's bedroom and was greeted by her cat. He was meowing loudly and pacing back and forth in front of the door before he jumped up on the bed and planted himself in the middle of Naomi's chest. I know you're trying to help. I gently pushed his fuzzy body off of her and leaned in to see if she was breathing. She was. Good. Your body is still doing its job. I nodded to myself and crossed over to the other side of the bed. Listen to me, Naomi. I hope you can hear me. I don't know where you are, so I'm not sure how to help. I can't dreamwalk, but maybe I can find you somehow. You just have to tell me where to go. I sat down next to her on the bed and just stared out the window. The moon was high in the sky and shining directly through the open pane. I turned over my shoulder to look at her, but she was just as still as she had been when I entered. There was no movement behind me, save for the cat who was now circling the bed. Naomi, please. I don't really know how all of this works, but you have to give me some sort of sign. I was becoming impatient. Too much time had lapsed since I woke from my own dream. Maybe I should have stayed asleep and tried to go after her. Sleep. I'll just go back to sleep. There was a novel idea. I laid myself down in the bed and curled up into a little ball, but sleep just wasn't happening. My brain was too addled after the last nap, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to fall asleep again tonight. Sleep. I just thought about the word. I had to stop panicking and just trust myself. Sleep. Sleep. My brain had fallen into a mantra, and no sooner had I started to repeat the words, I had found it. Subject name, Naomi Starr. I was sliding backward down a dark hole, an endless tunnel that sloped further and further into a black abyss. There was cackling beneath me, then next to me, then all around. I wasn't falling. Something was pulling me down. Listen to me, Naomi. A familiar voice echoed inside the tunnel. I heard the cackling voice begin to growl below me. I know you can hear me. I don't know where you are, so I'm not sure how to help. I can't dreamwalk, but maybe I can find you somehow. You just have to tell me where to go. Violet's voice reverberated in the darkness, bouncing off the confines around me. Violet! Violet! I called out, but I began to descend even quicker. Naomi, please. I don't really know how all of this works, but you have to give me some sort of sign. Violet called out to me again, after what had felt like ages of tumbling deeper and deeper into the darkness below. Just go back to sleep. I'll find you. I called out again and heard the voice below me bellow in a language that was entirely foreign to me. Paganti! It screamed as I finally hit the bottom of the pit. Had I not been in a dream, I would have surely died, but I might still die anyway. The blob-like woman, now that I could see that it was a she in the phosphorescent glow of the cavern, leapt atop my chest and wrapped her pudgy little hands around my neck. Paganti! She whispered as I began to struggle for breath. She wasn't strangling me, but the weight of her bulbous body would surely crush the life out of my own. Violet! I choked out as the hollow sockets in the woman's skull burned a hole right through me. Help! I wondered what my body was doing on the earthly plane. Surely it was dying. If Violet made it here, she would probably meet a similar fate. Shit! I couldn't let her come after me now. I had to think of something. The tree. This hag fell from the tree. Had she pulled me through the hollow stump and deep within the earth? Or had she taken me to the tree itself and pulled me back inside where she had been dwelling? There was no time to make a mistake and choose the wrong place. Violet would never find me, and I would never get to warn her about what might happen if she encountered this thing. So I just screamed. Or sort of screamed. It wasn't a very loud sound, but I made it as loud as I could. I fought, I kicked, I choked out noises that sounded like a dying animal, but I'd be damned if this thing was going to take me out just by sitting on me. It tried to keep me quiet, but I fought it tooth and nail, flailing about like my life depended on it. My life did depend on it. Katehimikan! The hag bellowed in my face, exposing a hideously gummy mouth in the glow of the cave. I assumed she was telling me to shut the hell up, but no one told me to be quiet, so I kept on making as much noise as I could. Naomi? I heard Violet's voice somewhere high above me, echoing down the rabbit hole that I had fallen through. Violet? I was able to get out one good call as I shoved the hag with otherworldly strength. I can't get down to you. The hole in the stump is too small. Violet responded. She sounded terrified. How in the hell did I get down here then? At least I knew I was still in Proctor's Ledge, but that didn't matter at the moment. Help! I yelled again, now able to fight with the woman who was again trying to crush me. I wanted to tell Violet to run, but I was too afraid to fight on my own. I can't, but you can. You control your dreams, Naomi. This is just like any other. You decide what happens and you decide when you wake up. Violet's response didn't seem helpful at first, until I really thought about it. I did turn that man's invisible nightmare monster into a giant hot dog, for Christ's sake. Even though it hadn't worked for me earlier as I was running my ass off down the street, Violet's faith in me seemed to give me more strength. I shoved the hag from my body one last time and watched her roll down an adjacent tunnel as I made myself as small as I could and clawed my way up the roots of the tree. We need to get out of here. Wake yourself up. Violet gripped me by the shoulders as soon as I poked out from the stump. I tried earlier and I couldn't. I was panicking, which wasn't good because so was Violet. Try it again. What do you usually do to wake yourself up from a nightmare? Violet pulled me from the stump as we heard frantic scratching from its hollow center. I usually just pinch myself. For a second, I couldn't even remember what it was that I did to take myself out of a nightmare. I began frantically pinching at myself like a lunatic as Violet started to run, tugging me behind her. It isn't fucking working! I shouted as the hag closed in behind us. I felt like I was having deja vu. Keep trying. Sometimes I have to close my eyes really hard and then open them up again to will myself out of a dream. Violet huffed as she pushed me in front of her and kept running. That was it. That's what I always did. I would just blink and then I'd be out of the dream and back in my own bed. Violet guided me as I squeezed my eyes shut and opened them again. We were still running through the nightmare streets of Salem and that damn blob of a woman was creeping up close behind us. It hadn't fucking worked. Go! Go! Just keep running. Violet urged me as I closed and opened my eyes a few more times, but nothing seemed to be happening. If I could control my dreams, why wasn't anything working the way I wanted it to? Why were we still in this nightmarish hellhole? Violet shoved me. Hard. I was trying to think when she pushed me with such a force that I veered off course while she turned to battle the hag. Violet! I called out to her, blinking one last time. Then everything went black. June 18th, 2016. Subject name, Adam Bodine. Naomi shot up into bed, sputtering and screaming like she was in the midst of an exorcism. I had been trying to wake Violet while Cassandra tried to rouse Naomi, but she had been the only one to wake up. It's got her. It's fucking got her. Naomi's eyes were panning wildly around the room as she held a death grip on Cassandra's bare arms. Calm down. Just breathe. What is going on? Cassandra seemed oddly cool given the circumstances. I was more worried about Violet at this point, who was still curled up in a ball, fast asleep next to where Naomi was trying not to have a panic attack. There was this thing. It came out of one of the trees at Proctor's Ledge. It attacked me, but Violet came to save me. She's still in there. Naomi sprung out of the bed and began fumbling for her sandals on the floor. Calm down, Naomi. I don't understand. Cassandra was still eerily calm herself as she tried to get Naomi to settle. I turned to Naomi, who seemed like she would have a better answer than Cassandra. What isn't there to understand? Violet is stuck in dreamland with something incredibly dangerous by the sound of it.
How do we get her out?
I don't know. I don't know how all of this shit works now.
Naomi dropped her arms at her sides heavily and just paced back and forth in the room. The thing is, you do. Only you know how it really works because it's your power. You're going to have to go back in there and get her. I tried to make her understand that she was the only one that could save Violet now.
Don't put this on her, Adam. Can't you see that she's upset?
Suddenly, Cassandra was showing some sort of urgency. What the hell is wrong with you? You've been weird ever since we got here. Naomi is the only one that can go back in there and get Violet out. I was about to blow my top. Cassandra was behaving quite unlike herself.
Violet went in there, didn't she? So it has to be simpler than we think.
Cassandra defended her stance on Naomi.
Violet was able to assist me because of her own powers. She can alter reality and I can alter dreams, but now she's stuck. I woke myself up, but I left her behind.
Naomi knelt on the bed and started shaking Violet's lifeless body. Stop. Naomi, stop! I grabbed her by the wrists and commanded her to look at me. That isn't going to bring her back. What is this thing you saw? Maybe we can lure it out and have it release Violet if you don't think you can go back in there and get her. I tried to make her think. I don't know. It was this fat old lady, nasty bitch that looked like Jabba the Hutt. When I fell asleep, I ended up on Proctor's Ledge, many years before the witch trials. I watched a man plant a tree, saw it grow, witnessed the trials, and then these men cut the tree down for some reason. This creature leapt from the branches, and I screamed. It saw me and gave chase. It was going to kill me, Adam. Dragged me under the ground and tried to suffocate me, but somehow Violet found me. I couldn't wake us up, though. I couldn't wake us both, and she shoved me out of the way so that bitch wouldn't take me again. Naomi prattled on, now shaking with rattled nerves as the gravity of the situation settled in. Do you think it could have been a demon? I turned to Cassandra.
Demon? What the hell are you talking about?
Naomi looked as if she had been socked in the stomach. Demons, I reiterated. I wasn't quite sure what type of question that was.
Demons?
Naomi's arms were up in the air again, her face screwed up.
Nobody said anything about demons.
Well, Violet did mention that we thought that's what we were at first. I thought we had made this clear earlier, but apparently we hadn't given enough detail.
Stay calm, Naomi. We aren't completely sure about anything, but we think that there's a biblical twist to this somehow. We have encountered demons and angels alike since your birthdays, and it doesn't seem to be stopping.
Now even Cassandra looked alarmed.
Well, fuck. Fuck.
Naomi started pacing again, as she was deep in thought.
I guess that thing could have been a demon, but it was nothing like I had ever read about before.
Violet was still silent, completely motionless in the bed. Thankfully, her chest was still rising and falling, so at least she was alive. Is there anything specific that you remember about this hag? Any details that might give us a leg up? I took the reins and tried to get down to the bottom of our dilemma. She was huge and blobby, for lack of a better word. She was old and sweaty and just disgusting. Naomi thought about the description of the possible demon.
But she did speak to me. It was in a different language, though, so I don't know what she said.
Write it down. I'll call Henri and see if maybe he can translate it. He has a knack for languages. I suggested as Naomi took a notebook from the bedside table, scribbled something on a page, and then tore it out before handing it to me. Paganti, Katahimi can't... Well, Henri will have fun with this. Excuse me. I took the piece of paper and stepped out into the living room to call my brother. Are they all right? Henri was getting in the habit of answering the phone with a question. Naomi is, but Violet, not so much. I didn't know another way to put it. Adam, Henri began, but I didn't let him finish. I need you to translate some words for me. I don't really have time to explain, but we think this may involve another demon. I was as succinct as I could possibly be. Give me the words, Henri demanded. I don't really know if I'm saying this correctly, but the first one is Paganti, and then Kata Himikon or something. I don't have any clue what language this is. I read off the sheet of paper that Naomi had given me. That's Tagalog, Adam. Henri recognized it right away. Tagalong? I wasn't sure if I heard him correctly. No, Adam. Tagalog, he reiterated. The word was still just as foreign to me. It's Filipino! Henri raised his voice. Oh, well, can you translate it? I figured if he knew what the language was that he probably could. Yes, it shouldn't take me long. What do you want the rest of us to do? I knew he didn't like playing the waiting game. Just stay put for now. We may have to bring Violet back to the hotel, but I'm not sure what we are doing yet. I kept thinking back to her, lost in a nightmare. Keep me updated, okay? I don't want anything to happen to her. Henri was on the same page as I was. Neither do I. I nodded to myself. I'll give you a call in a bit. I hung up and went back to the bedroom. Henri says the words are Tagalog, Filipino. He's going to translate it and get back to us. I spoke, noting that Naomi was sitting next to Violet in the bed and just fretting. Filipino? A Filipino demon? Cassandra asked. There's actually quite a bit of demon folklore in the Philippines. I don't know too much about the subject, but I'm sure we could do an internet search for them. Naomi clearly knew more on the topic than Cassandra did. In the meantime, what are we going to do about Violet? We can't just leave her in there. She seems okay now, but who knows how long that will last. I wondered what she was doing on the other side. Clearly she was safe for the time being, as her body was still alive and kicking. I have to go back in after her. Naomi spoke to me, but her eyes were on Violet. But maybe you should wait until Henri calls us back. I don't want you going in there without knowing what you're up against. There Cassandra went again, obviously more concerned with Naomi's safety than Violet's. Naomi was in control of this situation, whether Cassandra wanted to see that or not. I had had enough and couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. You know, Cassandra, you've been pretty flippant about certain things since we got here. Seems like you're more worried about Naomi now instead of being equally concerned about the two of them. I narrowed my eyes at her. I have done no such thing. I just want Naomi to get her head on straight so she doesn't get hurt. Cassandra cast a sidelong glance at the freckled woman still worrying over Violet's vacant body. But what about Violet? She went in there without any regard for her own safety to save a woman she barely knows, and you don't even seem to care. Though earlier, your concern for Naomi seemed to be a bit lacking when you left her here by herself. I spoke for not only myself now, but for Violet. Can you just stop dissecting my behavior, Adam? This is a very difficult situation for me. Cassandra barked, pinching the bridge of her nose. What was so difficult about giving equal attention to all parties involved? Naomi had merely been an acquaintance from what Josiah had said. Adam, I know you're upset and you want Violet back safely, but I couldn't imagine how difficult it was for Cassandra to get a phone call from me, let alone even agree to come and help. Naomi began, standing from the bed before walking over to Cassandra. They weren't just acquaintances. There was something deeper between them. We were lovers, Adam. More than lovers. It may have been brief, but it was a whirlwind relationship that left a sour taste in both our mouths. Cassandra finally revealed why she had been acting so strange. Well, that explained it. But it was never Naomi's fault. Cassandra continued to defend the woman. I messed up. Our relationship had become long distance, and we didn't get to see each other as much. And then I let myself slip with Henri. So she hadn't been single either. They both had been unfaithful in their relationships. This explains a lot. It finally clicked in my head. I was embarrassed, a little bitter. I didn't want to get wrapped back up in a relationship that we both knew wasn't going anywhere, but we loved each other. Even after my infidelity, I still cared about her. I never even fathomed that she would be part of this somehow. Cassandra turned to Naomi, her eyes puffy as if she were fighting back tears. I forgive you. I forgave you. Don't let it continue to fester inside you like this, okay? We have bigger things to work on right now, and our relationship has passed, but we haven't. You can't let it hold you back. The words of wisdom from Naomi's mouth struck a chord with me. I had been letting my past hold me back, too.
Thank you. I think I just needed to hear it again. I never wanted to lose you as a friend.
Cassandra threw her arms around Naomi.
And you won't, but let's try and get Violet out of the fucking hellhole that I created.
Naomi snapped out of her mushy monologue and went straight into fight mode. As if her words were a cue, my phone rang and I answered it quickly.
I was right. It's Tagalog. The first word, paganti, basically means revenge, retaliation. And that second word,
Henri paused as he read,
means
silence. I don't know if any of that is useful. I cupped my hand over the receiver.
The first word meant revenge and the second one was
silence, I whispered at Naomi.
She kept screaming that first word at me as she pulled me down into the tree stump, and the second was said to me while I called out for help. She was going to kill me.
Naomi had her hand over her mouth as she thought.
Did she say something about a tree stump? Can you explain to me what happened?
Henri had overheard our exchange. I relayed to him what I could remember from what Naomi told us and heard my brother let out a loud breath.
I took it upon myself to be preemptive and did a little research on Filipino demons. Based on what you just told me, that thing sounds like a batibat.
Violet would have been proud of Henri's researching skills. And that is? I waited for him to elaborate as all parties in the room stared at me.
A vengeful demon in Ilocano folklore. They usually come in contact with humans when the tree they reside in are cut down and used to support other structures. This causes them to migrate into holes found in the tree trunk. They exist in the form of a fat old woman that forbids humans to sleep near their post. They usually kill by suffocation.
I had put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear.
That has to be what I saw. But a Filipino demon in Salem? The tree that was planted was put here well before the witch trials. This isn't exactly where a lot of Filipinos settled around that time.
Naomi was hearing the words, but she didn't seem to believe them. Can we kill it? I asked. That's the answer we really needed.
It doesn't say. This is just folklore after all.
Henri was right. A lot of these had been stories, or so we thought. Biblical demons, Filipino demons. Were there more? This situation just got a whole lot bigger.
I'm gonna go get Violet regardless if we can kill that thing or not. I can't just leave her in there.
Naomi crawled back in the bed and laid her head on the pillow.
Please be careful.
Henri's voice buzzed through the phone.
I'll be fine. This is my thing.
Naomi took a deep breath and closed her eyes. There was a good possibility we were going to need all of us somehow, even if we were just here for moral support while Naomi went on her rescue mission. You should probably head down here, Henri. Bring Kane and Salome. We need everyone present for this. I took the phone off of speaker and spoke to my brother directly.
We'll do. I think I can remember how to get back to her apartment. Just don't let anything happen to either of them.
Henri hung up the phone as I glanced back at Naomi. Cassandra looked at me with doubt in her eyes.
She's out. Let's hope that she can find Violet. Do you guys prefer longer or shorter stories from the Archives episodes? Let me know on Facebook. You can find me there at facebook.com/The Occult Archives. I'm also on Instagram at The Occult Archives Podcast and on my website, author-emmoon.weebly.com. You can also become a member of the Archives on Buy Me a Coffee for as little as $3 a month, or you can just tip me and buy me a book for as low as $1. The more you interact with me on social media, the more likely it is for me to be seen, and that helps bring you more spooky content. But that's all for tonight's Stories from the Archives episode. Until next time, lock your doors, salt your windows, and remember, it's okay to sleep with the lights on.